I mean, what experiences or things would you say have enabled kind of you getting to where you are now?
What in the experiences? So the comical but very true one actually is Judge Judy.
Judge
It's
Judy.
yeah, it's a daytime TV show.
Yeah.
There's a judge called Judy Shineline, who watches over cases, and I loved it. Batman is my other hero, and there's a sense of justice and like arguing and fighting, oftentimes physical with Bruce, but fighting for justice, fighting for a world you believe in. That just caught my imagination as a younger person, and kind of stayed with me ever since. I had so many other examples as well, growing up in East London, where it was obvious to me that fighting for your rights, so to speak, speaking up, was important for the advancement of good stuff in society. Really good point actually, because there's something about our human nature that we can hold two opposing truths at the same time. We're very complex people, and the characters of Batman in particular bear that to the very core. That multi-billionaire white guy, by day, but then tries and helps people at night in a very dark, twisted way. There's justice there. He's a complex character. Judge Judy is a very direct, voracious character, but does good at the same time. And so there's something very interesting about those complex characters who seem, who their flaws are kind of quite obvious, but they are people that you root for and like ultimately, and you want them to do good because they're trying to do good in the world.
Yeah.
And what I love about even the kind of concepts of B and BAME is it's starting to unpack what BAME people have been denied, which is the awareness of complexity. BAME is complex. We know that. Even within Black, you have Caribbean, you have African, and within African, you've got East African, West African, and even within West African, you've got Ghanaian and Nigerian, and those cultures are very different. Within Nigeria, you've got Yoruba, Igbo, and so there's a complexity about ourselves that we're just denied because we're just lumped with the people from Indonesia, from Sri Lanka, from all these other ethnic minorities, and you're all considered to have a shared experience. And even though there's commonalities, because there's commonalities between all humans, in the media, and when I say media, I mean films as well as in the news. You kind of see the same tropes and stories about ourselves. Yeah, I mean, and let's not get twisted. It's not a great shared experience to have. Like, I don't like the fact that you and I, or another Black young man might meet ourselves and have a drink, and for 5 minutes we might be able to have shared experiences. But those shared experiences we probably know what it's like to be stopped for not having for no reason. We probably know what it's like to be discriminated for. But those aren't nice things to be bonding over. But that's an unfortunate situation of where we are. And yeah, it's an absolute personal pleasure to be on the Queen's Birthday Honours list with someone like Marcus, who's doing absolute bits in the for the country, and changing the perception, and that's a great boon of social media. He's controlling his own narrative about himself because he's not dependent on a newspaper to tell that story and to interpret it in its own lens, but he can go direct to millions of people and say, this is what needs to change, or this is what I'm doing, etc.
So you're now part of that famous alumni.
I am, and yeah, what does that mean? I'm still figuring it out. It's 2 weeks fresh, so I'm still kind of feeling my way through the club. So MBE is a member of the Order of the British Empire. It's I mean, people can kind of Google it or any other search engine for what it is in detail, but at its heart, it's a recognition from the state, from the Queen, about services you've done in a particular profession or thing. And mine was for services to healthcare leadership and global health policy.
What kind of things have you done then, like to be worthy of an MBE?
Oh, that's an interesting word, to be worthy, because one person's worth is another person's, nonsense. So I think in the eyes of the people who decide these things, I've probably done something related to a fellowship that's supporting future health leaders across Africa. And that's something I run through a think tank called Chatham House. It was probably for a global health cafe community that I've kind of been running from London, and that's been for a few years now. For anyone interested in global health, we kind of come together, we network, we build, we do stuff. It's probably for an African healthcare hackathon that I run every year. Our first one was in Google Campus, and we've just been growing to work with the likes of Médecins Sans Frontières, the Red Cross, the WHO, lots of multinational organizations to help solve their problems, to hack their problems. It could have been for a website I run, globalhealthjobs.com, which does what it says on the tin. It's a resource for people interested in global health jobs. It could have been for a number of things, but I think in total, it's been a nice thing to recognize some of those major things that I've been doing. If you take the concept of the British Empire and being a member of the Order of the British Empire, it strikes me as being a lot easier to change that definition of what an MBE holder looks like from being a holder of the MBE, as opposed to being on the sidelines or outside and writing opinion articles or writing things or trying to start discussions and campaigns about what an MBE holder should look like. I get far more truck from being an MBE holder, being Black, being very proud to be Nigerian, being vocal about all those kind of things. And so that, I hope to some people, can redefine what an MBE holder looks like. And also, more importantly, what excellence in Britain looks like. Because that's another thing, right? I think the more, maybe I'm getting too kind of grand with what I'm thinking here, but you think about your average person outside of M25, again, that's maybe too harsh in terms of average, but outside of the M25, in Middle England, in Midlands somewhere, or in Yorkshire, they understand, someone who isn't in urban culture like ourselves, perhaps, what they think of, okay, yes, this is the high state honour, and this is what excellent British people look like. 10, 15 years ago, and if Black people always rejected the MBE, they would never understand that actually, yes, some of the people that the state considers excellent can be Black footballers, can be Black artists. So yeah, I think I'm getting further in shifting opinions with that title, or including all its problematic historical links, than without it. With platforms like this, it's so interesting. And I think as a species, we're still understanding its interaction, its interfaces, its quote unquote control of us, our emotions, our understanding and interpretation of the world. Because I look at the Nigerian Army Twitter account and the Facebook account for the Nigerian Army, and they're working overtime to control the narrative. And while access to these images and videos are great, because it means justice can't be denied, because we can see the quote unquote truth and evidence of things. It just makes also things quite problematic, because for those with power and resources, and also wisdom and more intelligence, they can control the narrative quite well.
Like, how can we make sure that when a vaccine does become available, that countries in Africa, like poorer countries, will get equal access to it as richer countries? I mean, do you have a kind of viewpoint on that, or a perspective?
Obviously, morally, I think it's the right thing to do. I think the argument, however, probably needs to shift to a global health security one, which is that to be secure in the West, to be secure in Pennsylvania, to be secure in Peckham, you need to also be secure in Pakistan. And because we saw with its rapid rise that there is a very interconnected world, and we can't undo those things immediately. As soon as we can, planes will reopen, airways will reopen, pathways will reopen. So if we still want parts of that world, we have to secure other parts of the world, which is why the global health security framework is a very attractive one, because that's a conversation that kind of diverts the international solidarity one, which many politicians aren't winning the discussion on.
Okay. And what's next for you? What's your future ambitions?
Oh, what's next? To get through the coronavirus pandemic in one piece is definitely one thing, and with my sanity in check. The PhD is obviously interesting. I'm looking forward to that kind of learning journey. And then selfishly, yeah, like the MBE, because I actually knew about it in May. That's when the Queen's birthday originally is, and that's when they normally release the honours, but they delayed it because of the obvious coronavirus. And so I've definitely been on a bit more of a journey about thinking about it, and I'm now at the point where, you know, I've accepted it, I'm happy with it, and the kind of hard worker in me is thinking about, well, what next for British elitism might be available to me. So yeah, you know, trying to do more of the same.